Welcome back to another edition of the Friday Golf Podcast. I am your host, Andy Johnson, and today I am joined by one of our old co-hosts, Garrett Morrison. He is now the host of our new Designing Golf podcast. If you haven't listened to that, check it out. Garrett is one of my favorite people to talk about all golf with, pro game, architecture. He does a lot of architecture coverage, but I kind of enjoyed. He hasn't had to, give out any pro golf takes in a while. So I asked him to come up with some pro golf takes for, we each prepped 3 big storylines for the rest of the golf season. So he came up, hadn't given out takes in a while. So his chamber was fresh. And we kicked around that, as well as we talked about the course we're most excited to see host a tournament the rest of the year. So check out Garrett's pod, Designing Golf, if you haven't already. And we're going to kick this podcast over to him. But first, let's talk about our partner, Echo. Echo makes some of the most comfortable shoes I've ever worn, whether it's golf shoes or just like personal life shoes. Their new Biome H5 is really spectacular. They are the innovators behind the hybrid golf shoe revolution. And the Biome Hybrid H5 is their latest one. I am in Scotland recording this, and these shoes drew inspiration from the Scottish Highlands. And really, you can see in the design, they're beautiful shoes, and they are so comfortable. They keep your feet dry. They keep your feet comfortable. I can't recommend Echoes enough. They have like next generation tech in these shoes. So Biome H5 features Echo's all new Echo Tex waterproof membrane. It ensures that your feet stay dry and comfortable. So check out that. They also have the Echo Terra traction system sole, which provides stability and traction, and it's really nice look. So if you want to check out Echo, go to us.echo.com and check out their new Biome H5 shoes. They are really spectacular. Big thanks to Echo for partnering with us. And let's get to Garrett Morrison. All right, Garrett, welcome on. Former co-host.
Thank you for having me on this fine podcast. It's a real thrill.
Now that you have your own podcast, now you can say that I'm the most frequent guest of this podcast.
Exactly. Yeah. That would be. I've been relegated to get all of my past appearances on this podcast are now guest appearances, in preparation for the podcast called Designing Golf. People should know that it's called Designing Golf. They don't know about it yet. PJ was happy that I mentioned that.
It's been delightful. I've really enjoyed it. So I'm excited for, as we keep getting into major season, the stuff that you'll do on the major courses. And I just enjoy the exploration that you're doing there.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we've got some really fun courses for major championships coming up. So there should be some good episodes of Designing Golf, and obviously, I'll be coming back on this podcast as well to talk about some of the major venues that we'll be seeing in the coming weeks.
I think it'll be the first ever in 2025 and beyond. Maybe it'll be the only time back-to-back guest. I think we're going to record that at Oakmont.
Is that right? Yeah, that's coming up soon.
Yeah,
it might be a couple of weeks from now, as opposed to next week.
Well, this is going to be a couple of weeks or a week from now.
Oh, okay. So we've got to shift our time frame a little bit.
Yeah,
I see.
Yeah, see.
All right,
we're
get
getting
used to me,
ahead.
listeners.
I'm going to be in Scotland when this is posted.
That's right.
So
that's right.
This is
going out of the country.
A little work behind the scenes, getting stuff in the bucket before I go abroad.
You're working ahead, Andy. This is great. This is great to see.
Well, it's all PJ, really. PJ's the boss now.
I mean, I was going to say that, but I thought it would be impolite.
For this pod, we are going to do a fun exercise. Rory winning a major removes kind of what the big story's been at every single major for
what
the
do
last...
we talk about now?
6 years he said that. What are we going to talk about next?
Yeah,
April?
that's right. At his post-tournament press conference, he's like, "What are we going to talk about next year?" Legitimate point. What do we all talk about?
Yeah, but like literally every major has been like, oh, is Rory going to win one finally?
Yeah.
And again, and that is removed. So I wanted to kick around what you and you and I thought were the three biggest storylines in golf the rest of the year, and I think it's kind of got a men's slant, not to slight the women's world, but it's we approached it from a men's slant. And then we will close out with the golf course that's hosting a tournament, a televised tournament that we are most excited for the rest of the year remaining.
Yes. That'll be our cap segment there. Yeah.
So let's dive in. What's your first storyline?
Well, would it be weird to talk about Rory now that we've just said that we don't have to talk?
I don't think it's weird. He's one of my three. So what do you got on Rory? It's the most
interesting thing going in the golf world. I think the fact that he won the Masters opens up a bunch of other possibilities that I'm excited about, because Rory was getting sick of talking about the same thing before every major. It was really starting to wear thin. I mean, we had 11 years of it essentially. And so it's going to be very enjoyable to talk about some different things with regard to Rory. So I guess my first point would be, how does Rory react to this win? Because he could go in a couple of different directions. It seems like the general consensus is that this got the monkey off his back and it might open the floodgates, because he has been relieved of this mental burden of chasing another major championship, and specifically chasing a green jacket, that he's now going to be able to win majors more easily. He could win 3 or 4 more before the end of his career, which would put him in an entirely different tier all time. He would be playing among the, I don't know, the Walter Hagens and the real greats of all time on that major list if he were able to do that. It seems like people are generally hopeful, optimistic that he can get there because he has been freed up in this way. But I would say it's almost equally possible that he lets his foot off the gas a little bit, because this has been what has motivated him for a decade. And he has worked really hard to plug various leaks in his game, whether it was putting at one point or his wedge game more recently. He has had to put in a lot of labor to get his game in the shape that it was at the Masters and before. And so now that he has gotten what he wanted, now that he's accomplished so much of what he set out to accomplish at the beginning of his career, does he relax a little bit? And does that end up having a detrimental effect on his game? I think it could go either way. I'm sort of leaning toward the first, that, just knowing Rory's talent, him playing free is the best possible thing for his game. But I would acknowledge that there's a possibility that the opposite could happen. So I'm wondering where you land on that.
I love this take, as a question, because I think everybody, when Sergio Garcia, and I'm not comparing Rory to Sergio Garcia, but when Sergio Garcia knocked off the Masters, everybody was like, this is, and I was one of those people, the floodgates.
It totally felt like that could happen. I mean, it's frankly incredible that he hasn't won more majors given his ability. He's still really good.
And he hasn't even contended in one since.
Hasn't even come close.
So I will, like, major championships are hard. I think like the thing you would point back to is like, Rory's just been such a factor in majors for so long that
he's given himself so many chances.
And I think if you saw a decline, it would be in a couple years, would be my thinking. One of the things that I think with Rory is you never see him like beating balls into the night. You never see him like talking openly about like really needing to work on stuff, right? Like I think that's like unique in the professional golf space. One of the things I think that he has is like I think he works really hard, but I think he works also very smart. And I think one of the things is I feel, and I think he's pretty private with the way he works and what he does, but it seems to me that he has his game in a state where it's very manageable. He doesn't have a swing instructor looking over every single shot he hits on the range, like so many players, making micro adjustments. Like, he owns a lot of his swing. Michael Bannon will come in. Maybe he'll go see Butch Harmon, for a couple days in the year. But for the most part, Rory McIlroy is Rory McIlroy's swing coach. Yeah. Faxon helps him with putting. But, I think like a lot of that is like just the idea of how he's putting. Rotella helps him with his mind. But like, you don't see him. I thought like PJ pulled these numbers for me during Masters is like the polar opposites of Bryson and Rory. I think Bryson hit something like 1,200 balls on the range at the Masters. Rory hit 300.
That was Rory just a great new feature of the app, by the way. So informative.
I approximated those numbers. I would have had to look into my notes, but he has his thing. Like he gets to the course. I think it's 4 hours before his tee time. He does his workout, and it's like, regardless of the day, he has his set routine. And I think that's the thing. Like, he's been very open about his introspective approach, reading books about a wide range of topics, nonfiction books. And I think he's actually been one of the golfers that's most curious about like the way that super successful people structure their lives to create a sustainable life. Like that he does that type of reading that like a business person would do. And I think he's taken that approach a little bit to his golf game and managing his golf game, where I think golf is obviously a huge part of his life, but he also has a lot of other aspects of his life that take up time in his life. And I think like he does his work on his golf game, and he knows how the work is and what it is. And I think that might be like kind of like unique among pro golfers, the way he approaches it.
It's interesting that he didn't overreact to the wedge problems that he was having a couple of years ago and even into last year. A lot of players might have gone deep on some mechanical adjustments there and created problems elsewhere in their game. We see this happen all the time. I think maybe most recently it happened with Justin Thomas, where he was trying to fix something or other, was playing well, but had one thing that was bothering him, and it just kind of snowballed into...
Or Victor Hovland.
Or Victor Hovland is maybe the best example recently. I mean, he's still probably overthinking it, but it's good to see him rounding back into form. So it really does seem like Rory stayed calm and gradually fixed what was going on in that specific aspect of his game and didn't try to over adjust or do anything too quickly.
Maybe the only thing we've seen him over adjust, overreact to in his career was the Bryson speed thing.
The distance thing. Yeah. That was the one time it was kind of out of character, but it seems like he realized, I'm plenty long, this is still a strength of mine, and I don't need to do anything drastic here. So, very interesting from Rory. My big question with him, though, is can he win majors in control mode anymore? That was what was so scary about him in 2014. He won the PGA Championship and the Open Championship that year with his kind of B-plus game, just by leaning into his distance advantage and ball striking advantage, and those incremental advantages added up to a win at both of those tournaments. Valhalla was a little more exciting. The Open Championship was just sort of business, right? That's what made you feel like he was going to win 11, 12 majors at least because of the way he won at Hoylake. But he hasn't done that since then, and he certainly didn't do that at the Masters this year. He won the Masters by hitting a bunch of really spectacular, outrageous shots at the right moments and then hitting some really bad shots. That's not a super sustainable model, really. I mean, Rory can do it more often than most people, but can he win majors playing boring golf the way that Tiger did in his prime? That's my big question with Rory going forward. And that's going to determine, I think, whether he wins 3 or 4 more majors or whether he wins none or one.
I think that's a good question. And I think something that gets swept under the rug a little bit. I think the level of player that he's going against now is so much higher.
Yeah.
That it is much more difficult to just like blow away the field with a B+ game. Mm-hmm. I think he can win. Like, I mean, the Masters was like kind of an example. Like, there were moments where he had his A+ game. There were also moments where we saw like Rory of like the horror show of Rory at the Masters came out in spades and different moments.
F shots and A+ shots.
Yeah, it was like, I mean, the final round was kind of like the quintessential opening Rory round at the Masters, right?
Yeah, it was
like a 2015 opening 73.
Yeah,
where it's like I don't understand. He hit some amazing shots. He also hit some really bad shots. But I think one thing that I had my Rory thought, the storyline, something that I don't think gets talked about enough is the idea of like the magnitude of winning multiple majors in a year. So obviously this has been talked about a ton, is how well the rest of the majors set up. Quail Hollow, a course that he has dominated at. Oakmont, a course that, if you're a great driver of the golf ball, you start out very far ahead of the field.
He should be great there. He wasn't anywhere near the mix in 2016, was he? I'll have to look that up.
Like you think about like that's where that kind of US Open, there was a shift in US Opens. Mm-hmm. And I would say that him and Xander Schauffele are the two best U.S. Open players in the world right now.
I'd say. Bryson would have to be in that.
Bryson too,
in that category as well, right?
Yeah. So Bryson, Xander, and Rory, the 3 best U.S. Open players right now. Okay. Scotty Scheffler, you can put in there too. But I think like, and then you have Portrush in his backyard course that he's played tournament golf since he was a kid at. So I looked up, one of the things that I'm fascinated about is like the idea of winning multiple majors in multiple years. There aren't many golfers that have done it. Jack Nicklaus did it 5 times, which is hilarious. Also, if you look at the space between winning multiple majors in a year, so Jack did it 17 years apart. He did it in 63 and 80. Tiger had 4 years, but they were all between 2000 and 2006. Rory, Gary Player only had 1. Arnold Palmer had 2, but they were close together. Phil never had a year with 2 majors in a year. And you just start to think like the idea of like multiple majors in a year and him doing it 11 years apart is pretty, like, it is a emphatic exclamation mark on, winning 2 majors in a year is, for the most part, and Xander did it last year, right? You and Scotty had an all-time year, Xander had an all-time year. But you are without a doubt, for the most part, best player in the world of golf. And to do it over a decade apart is a pretty unbelievable achievement.
Yeah. And to do it, if he pulls it off this year, then he will have done it before when his prime was supposed to be and after when his prime was supposed to be. He did a lot of not winning majors during what should have been his absolute peak prime. And so it's an odd looking career. Who do you think Rory is like chasing down right now on the all-time list? It's Phil, right? Yeah. Because Phil's got 6 majors. Yeah. That feels like the next one. And then Tom Watson is in a tier above. But
Yeah.
Arnold Palmer is a hard comparison because Palmer did so much of his winning in one window in the 1960s, and then obviously won a ton of PGA Tour events and worldwide events, and it's just tough to compare careers from those eras. But yeah, Phil is really the next beast that that Rory needs to slay.
I see people like he hasn't caught Faldo, and I think that's just like Faldo's career was so short.
Yeah.
And it was so like obviously 6 majors is incredible. It's an incredible achievement, but he only had like 6 chances to win majors and he just won.
Yeah, Faldo really closed out those chances because Faldo was never anywhere near as dominant as Rory McIlroy overall, just as a golfer. I don't know. Maybe I'm forgetting something from. I mean, this is a long time ago now that I was following Nick Faldo, but yeah, he just the fact that Faldo won 6 majors is extremely impressive, given that those were his chances and he didn't have a long period of real dominance in the game.
I mean, if you look at Phil, if he gets another major, he ties Phil. Phil obviously was winning into his late 40s, and he won the PGA in his 50s. Phil has 45 PGA Tour wins. Rory has 29.
Yeah.
Rory has 44 professional wins, though.
Right.
Where if you have, and it's like if you start to stack I don't think they should. I don't know where you count these. Like the fact that Rory's won all these European Tour Player of the Years is also like an aspect of his career that does, like Phil was just a dyed in the wool PGA Tour player, and Rory's a full-time PGA Tour player, but he's also played this part-time schedule on the European Tour and been dominant there too.
Yeah. Well, and that sends me back to Faldo. Actually, we might not be giving enough credit to the European Tour run that Nick Faldo had when the European Tour was basically a co-equal tour with the PGA Tour. And so, Nick Faldo's European Tour record is incredibly impressive. And perhaps the reason we don't remember him as a dominant player is because we're Americans and just didn't experience that run from Faldo as much. So yeah, that seems to be the category that he's playing in right now. But it makes a big difference whether he wins 1 more versus 3 or 4 more. Because if 3 or 4 more happen and it's completely within the realm of possibility, then he's passing those guys up, and he's all of a sudden in a stratosphere that we haven't seen players in a long time.
Yeah, and Watson had two major years too. I didn't include that, but and they were like 5 years apart.
He won in flurries.
77.
Yeah, and so much of his resume is Open Championship golf too. That's the thing about Watson is, Rory's got the Grand Slam and is sort of an all seasons player. Watson was really just one of the great links golf players of all time.
Yeah, I think that's it's a fascinating where like if he knocks off another major, it's just like when you start to look at careers, it's a very odd career.
Yeah,
with the majors at the front, big golf, majors at the back.
He was so young when he won his first slate of majors. I mean, he was, again, just not yet in his prime, and now he's on the back end of it, and it looks like he could go on another one of those runs. I
will push back those, like, this used to be golfers' primes, and I'm wondering if we had this with tennis. Tennis has followed, like, in a lot of it, like I did a pod years ago, maybe and 6 years ago. Too, by the way, it's like all the gerontocracy of sports. it's interesting. I did a pod years ago about tennis and the technological innovation of racket sizes, the oversized racket, and what it did to the sport. Yeah, like it had this like incredible youth movement. But the model that they predicted out was that eventually it returns to, you have this huge youth wave when technological innovation occurs. And this was done to see what technology would do to a workforce, was the idea of it. You have a period where there's, for a couple generations, a huge youth wave. But then on the back end of that couple generation youth domination, experience returns to being profoundly important, and it kind of normalizes back. I'm wondering if we are going to be getting to that point with golf at some point. When do we have that kickback to where it used to be that the best players in the world were, for the most part, between 30 and 40?
Yeah, it's very possible. It's so hard to predict the effects of technological advances on sports. And I think you also have to figure in more advanced training and how that has allowed certain very motivated athletes to extend their careers. That's what's going on with Steph Curry and LeBron James right now. Those guys are just playing way later into their careers than they should have, partly because they're still in great shape and they've been very intentional and smart about keeping themselves in tip-top condition. And so if Rory can do that, there's no reason that he can't keep winning a lot of majors in his 40s. The question is, given the balance of his life, given his various interests, is he really gonna want to do that? I don't know. At some point, he's probably going to want to just be a businessman and a family man, and that would be understandable. But if he decides to keep grinding through his 40s, of course, obviously we saw Phil Mickelson win at Kiowa at age 50. So it's very possible. Should we talk about somebody other than Rory at this point?
Yeah. No, PJ's shaking his head. No. Let's move on.
We should keep talking about it. This is just a Rory podcast. We got 3 storylines, all Rory.
We got 2 storylines done, I guess. What's your next one?
My next one is related to Jon Rahm, and I'm going to try to move beyond just the kind of hacky hot take that he hasn't delivered, but he really hasn't delivered in the only tournaments that he plays anymore that matter.
I'm not going to say this, but having said that, I am going to say that.
I'm just going to get that out of the way. I'm just going to get that out of my system. I'm also going to get out of my system that it was pretty unseemly to see some social media users patting Rahm on the back for a T14 at the Masters. Rahm is better than that, right? We don't need to give him a gold star for a T14 at Augusta National. We should have very high expectations for this player. Now, okay, my more lukewarm take is that I think Rahm is absolutely playing great golf right now. He just, for whatever reason, hasn't done it in majors since the beginning of 2024. He, if you look at the data golf rankings, if you look at his strokes gained stats coming out of LIV, he is still in the very, very top tier of players. I would say that there's kind of a big 5 right now with Rory, Scotty, Bryson, Xander, and Rahm, but it's really just been a big 4 in majors recently. Now, this changes all the time. We always want to declare a big 3 or a big 4 or a big 5. This group shifts constantly. So
remember when it was Rory,
Jason Day,
Rory, Jason Day, Spieth, and Ricky.
Yeah, exactly. I know. It changes literally every 3 months.
I remember they played one of those Dubai tournaments, and it was Rory, Spieth, and Ricky paired together. It was in 2016, I think, and I stayed up and watched it.
Yeah, it's like thinking back on that is like looking back at the Sports Illustrated covers that have like the next big thing, and it's some player that you had,
Chad Campbell.
Yeah, some guy you'd never heard of.
Iron.
You'd never heard of since. In any case, Sebastian Telfair or something.
Who was the Lenny Cook? Lenny Cook, New York's pride and joy. PJ's Saint. He was, St. John's savior.
Bringing up some.
Probably PJ doesn't even remember him. He can't talk. He can't talk on this podcast. He doesn't have a mic.
That's
can't
right.
Can't defend his Johnnies.
Yeah, he's in the producer box. Poor PJ. Can't defend New York. In any case, Rahm is part of this group, and I would really say that if I'm just thinking who are the best golfers in the world, who are the guys, it's Rory, Scotty, and Rahm, or it should be. Those should be the guys. I think those are the best players right now. But obviously, since the beginning of 2024 for Rahm, it's been T45, cut, WD, T7 at the Open Championship last year, his best finish in the past 5 majors, and then T14 recently. If you look at what Rory, Scotty, Bryson, Xander have done recently, all of them have won a major since the beginning of 2024. All of them have racked up a good number of top 10s and in a couple of cases top 5s. They've been in the mix and they've been a factor. They've been relevant. Now, I do think Rahm is going to have a good performance in a major this season. He's a +2 strokes gained guy still. His all-around game looks really solid. There's not like a problem that he's having with his putting or his short game or anything like that. It seems like he's pretty ship shape. So he should be contending in these big events. But there's a lot of pressure building up on him right now. And I get the sense that it has started to bother him a bit. And so that's the factor.
Yeah. I think this is the risk, right? Is the scar tissue. And we just saw a generational golfer deal with this. And it compounds and it becomes more and more of a problem the longer and longer it goes on.
Yeah.
Rahm needs to be in the mix on a Sunday in one of these. Because, the last year he peaked at the Open, the Olympics, and into the fall with Liv. That's where he played his best golf last year. And he was great at the end of the year. Like, he could have won the Olympics. He probably should have won the Olympics. Won gold medal there and ended up with no medal, And I think, he had like a similar disappointing major stretch after he won his first US Open and then he won the Masters. And maybe this just is how it kind of goes with him, where it's this like kind of ebb and flow. The other thing with Rahm is like his life's changed dramatically. Like, he has 3 kids now. He's playing on a different tour. And maybe that's where he peaked, where he started playing his best golf was in the fall. And it's like when your life changes, the way your golf like syncs up with that changes, how it syncs up. And, the days get longer and he starts playing better golf. If you want to be a present dad and go to the park during shorter days, like, there's less time to practice golf, right?
That's an interesting theory.
I just,
give Rahm a little bit of a bump when it's longer days.
It seems like he cares about being a dad too, which is great. Like, it shouldn't be like a thing that you deter, but like, I think the overarching thing with Jon Rahm is the way he's going about his schedule. And I think he's very much an iron sharpens iron kind of guy. Is the way where he's playing. It's not the way he's going about his schedule, because he has no choice in how his schedule is set, which is probably the problem. Like, I mean, he doesn't get in last year when he got in the cauldron, he did not deliver the way we're used to seeing him deliver.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's almost like a bull when he gets into the mix, is the way that I would have described him before he went over to Liv. And, last year when he got in the mix in these big moments and these historic events, he's a guy that cares about history. He kind of faltered and fell off in a way that we weren't really used to seeing with him. And, that's just a question. It's going to be a huge question because we're 8 majors since his Masters win. Obviously he had the foot issue at Pinehurst, but we're 8 majors of real irrelevance.
Yeah, it's very surprising. But if you look at 2022 in the majors for Rahm,
yeah, he wasn't. That
was a similarly down year. And then he came back right after that and won the Masters the next year. And so we've seen him fall off in big tournaments before. And the question is whether that's one of those natural dips, a readjustment of the market, so to speak, or if it's actually something going on in his head and his game about real tournament golf. And if it's the latter, then we might continue to hear some grumblings from Rahm or whoever else about the obscurity of Liv. And that would be another set of big effects on the professional golf world.
I think there's already a lot of grumblings from Rahm about the way people perceive his place in golf, that he is unhappy, very unhappy with the way that the public and even his peers are, where he feels like he stands in golf right now.
Yeah.
And that's, for a guy with, 3.5 years left on his contract, probably not a good feeling.
probably not. And, some athletes take that kind of disrespect and turn it into fuel. I'm not sure how well that works in golf. Tiger Woods seemed to make it work for a while, in the Michael Jordan way.
Brooks Koepka.
Brooks finding these perceived slights, whether they're real or not, and turning them into great performances. I don't know if Rahm is that guy, really. I'm not sure that he's necessarily built that way to play his best golf when he's trying to prove something to somebody who has slighted him. I haven't necessarily seen evidence that that's how he's built. It seems like frustration is more more eats away at him than motivates him. But we'll see.
Yeah, he's I go back to this, like, I'm not a PGA Tour apologist. I think I'm pretty on the record for being very critical of a lot of things about the PGA Tour. I will say the one thing about it is, like, they have some big historic events like Riviera, like Players. I think like Quail Hollow Memorial was another event where, like, Rahm could go and play tournament golf that, like, felt like it mattered at high level golf course with really repercussions for mishits, and you think about these events and those were events they played great at, right?
Yes, Memorial's a great event for him.
Great event. Had one at Riv, and you're playing against the best players in the world, and that, I don't think Rory wins the Masters if he doesn't win the Players. If he doesn't, like that, the whole year leading into, like, the way your year is constructed leading into these tournaments helps you so much.
Yeah, Scotty Scheffler has used that momentum for a couple of seasons now too.
Yeah,
where he just built up to major season by winning and getting used to winning.
And if you look at when Rahm won the Masters, he was having an all-time start to the year.
Yeah.
And I just think that's, like, one of the issues here is, like, he's not playing great. Like, they played Doral. Doral's probably, like, one of their best golf courses that are going to play this year. They're at Chapultepec now. And then I
love that they're at that golf course. That's perfect.
Like, I don't know what the event is that leads into the PGA, but, like, the other guys are playing Philly Cricket Club. They're playing like a bona fide great golf course leading into the PGA. And it's not that tour outside of Bryson has not been a great place for people to get ready for major championships.
Yeah. And Tyrrell Hatton is playing pretty well. It's whatever Bryson is doing, it's kind of amazing, because I would expect the effect of the schedule disruption and the fact that you don't have any choice in when you're playing. I think Jon Rahm probably got used to choosing whether to play the week before a major or play 2 weeks before a major. And that element of choice, I think, is pretty important, or was pretty important to Jon Rahm. It was definitely very important to Brooks Koepka, who is, there's a whole other discussion to have about where he is right now. But I think that's
almost made my list.
Yeah,
I guess he is on my next thing. We'll jump over to that.
So we're getting to your next thing, your second thing now.
Yeah, Ryder Cup teams.
Yeah,
I think it's been a banner year for the Europeans.
Oh yeah.
Obviously, nobody's won a home Ryder Cup or an away Ryder Cup in forever. And if you would have said 4 years ago at Whistling Straits, you looked at the American team and you looked at Bethpage, and it's like, there's no way with the construction of the European team, who had all these old, shorter hitters, Lee Westwood, Graham McDowell.
Ian Poulter.
Yeah, Ian Poulter. McDowell wasn't on the team. Ian Poulter was on the team. Like, this aging team. Tyrrell Hatton was at the time like the 35th ranked player in the world.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way this European team's going to even be able to compete. That was the story.
This was the Whistling Straits European team. That was their last hurrah, right? Whistling Straits. We're on to a new era now.
And then you look at Bethpage, and you looked at that American team that had like basically no players outside the top 15 in the world. At the time, Rory was, I think, 15th in the world at Whistling Straits. And you looked at this American team, and it's like, this is the greatest collection of players, and they're going to be around forever. And Bethpage is a bomber's paradise, and look at this power advantage Americans have over the Europeans. And it almost feels like it's flipped to where you look at the European team, you look at the likes of Rory, Rahm, the Højgaards, Ludwig Åberg, and you start to be like, wow, they might be like overwhelming at Bethpage with their power and their all-around skill level. And the American team, and it's stout at the top, but we saw this the last time there was a major championship at Bethpage, where it was Brooks. It was two of the prodigious power players in the game of golf, Brooks and DJ, and really nobody else had a chance that weren't, unless you were a power player. And you look at the American team, they have Bryson, they have Xander, two guys that can move it in the top 4 of their rankings. Then it's Scotty Scheffler, who is obviously, a supreme talent, but not a power player. Colin Morikawa, supreme talent, but not a power player. Russell Henley, not a power player. Justin Thomas, a guy that can move the golf ball, but not like a huge power player. And then this is where it gets very interesting. The next 6 in their rankings right now are Maverick McNeely, Brian Harman, JJ Spawn, Patrick Cantlay, Andrew Novak, and Harris English. Yeah. Hoagie is 13th. 14th is Daniel Berger. 15th is Lucas Glover, who won a major at Bethpage, almost 20 years ago. Billy Horschel, this team is not what it, the names, it's almost shocking.
Yeah, they have a depth problem. And this could change before the end of the year if certain guys start playing better. But there are too many members right now of Team USA who seem to be in the wilderness. DJ and Brooks Koepka are big ones because those are the guys who had a chance to win the last major at Bethpage, and they're just nowhere to be seen at the moment. And that may change before the end of the year, but that's what needs to change before the end of the year for them to feel like the favorites going into this. Max Homa is nowhere to be found. Ricky Fowler is nowhere to be found. Tony Finau not playing well. And then you've got some guys who are sort of in questionable form. I think Patrick Cantlay should be a stalwart, but he's just been kind of hovering around mediocre finishes by his standards recently. Wyndham Clark is maybe always going to be inconsistent, but he doesn't seem like a sure thing either. And so you start to fill in this team with some guys who maybe don't seem like very good course fits at Bethpage Black. Brian Harman is playing great golf, but is he the guy that you want at Bethpage Black? I mean, he might have to be that guy. And then you look at the lower tiers of the European team, and you've got some interesting prospects. You mentioned the Højgaard twins, but I would equally say that, I don't know if you mentioned Sepp Straka.
Yeah.
He's been playing great golf recently. Aaron Rai is sort of like a candidate for this team. Steven Jaeger is a really good player. There are a lot of interesting prospects to fill in those 10, 11, 12 slots on the European Ryder Cup team. And I don't feel similarly about the US team.
I mean, it's incredible if you look at the world rankings. So world rankings wise, the Europeans have 9 of the top 21 players in the world right now. And one of those is not Jon Rahm. Important footnote.
Yeah.
So one, and obviously
and not Sergio Garcia either, who's playing really good golf.
And the Europeans are missing the Americans are missing Bryson in that also. I think actually Bryson might be in the top 20. But anyways, 9 of the top 21 players, that's the same as the Americans. And that is such a huge shift from the Whistling Straits Ryder Cup. And it's kind of gradually shifted that way over 4 years, but it's just a reminder always 4 years is a long time. If you look at the world rankings when the Whistling Straits was the Ryder Cup, the Europeans had 3 players in the top 15. It was Rahm at number 1 in the world, Victor Hovland at 14, Rory at 15, Tyrrell Hatton was 17th. And the Americans' highest ranked player at that Ryder Cup, do you know who it was?
No.
It was the 22nd ranked player in the world at the time, Scotty Scheffler.
Yeah. Wow.
And it's wild just to think about, how much has changed.
Yeah. Yeah, it's we're used to going into these Ryder Cups talking about the US team being much better on paper, but the European team having the intangibles that will allow them to compete and maybe win. That's what we're used to saying before every Ryder Cup, but I think we're going to be singing a different tune this year. I think that European team is so talented, and very few of the guys that they want to be on that team that Luke Donald is going to want to pick because he knows that they're the best players seem to be out of form right now. And again, this might shift before the end of the year, but that's the key thing. All of the top European players, aside from Matt Fitzpatrick, are playing great golf right now, and that's just not the case with the Americans. So
let me just run down these players on the American team where they ranked in 2021. This is insane. Number 2 in the world, DJ. Number 3 in the world, Morikawa. Number 4 in the world, Cantlay. Number 5 in the world, Schauffele. Number 6 in the world, JT. Number 7 in the world, Bryson. Number 9 in the world, Brooks. Number 10 in the world, Tony Finau. Number 11 in the world, Harris English. Number 13 in the world, Jordan Spieth. I think Berger was on that team at 16th in the world. And then I believe the last player on that team was Scotty Scheffler at 22 in the world.
Yeah. Incredible.
And Scotty was they took Scotty Scheffler.
Yeah. What a surprise.
And then he went out and just dusted Rahm in singles.
He played great. Yeah. I will say the feelings will change. The vibes will change if Justin Thomas has a really great rest of the 2025 season. If he wins a major, if he wins at Quail Hollow, where he has good memories, then the U.S. team is going to have that starting 5 of Scheffler, Schauffele, Morikawa, DeChambeau, and Justin Thomas. And that feels a little better, because if Justin Thomas is playing Justin Thomas golf, then that's a hell of a first 5, and you just try to fill in around that. But yeah, again, the depth of the European team is pretty imposing.
Yeah, and people always are going to center around Homa's struggles, Spieth's struggles. I think a big one is Cantlay's struggles.
Yeah, the fact that he's not in that elite tier right now,
and he's been
a big deal.
Arguably best player for the last 2 or 3 Ryder Cups.
Well, at Whistling Straits, he and Xander were kind of that solid middle of the top group of the U.S. team. They're just so reliable. And somehow or another, Cantlay just hasn't been a reliable greatest player, one of the greatest players in the world recently.
Yeah, and then just some other players that just, you thought maybe Sahith Theegala was heading towards this. He's 27th in the rankings right now. Sam Burns, a player that's been on a lot of teams, Scotty Scheffler's pal, 26 in the rankings. It's just it's just different. I think
and
one of the promising
Clark too.
Yeah, one of the promising players for the Americans is Daniel Berger.
Yeah.
who's playing great golf. He's up to 14.
He's playing really solid. And Akshay Bhatia, maybe Akshay is going to level up. But the fact that we're hoping for Akshay Bhatia and indicates where we are.
But I also just want to be point out things here. There's also a course fit aspect of Bethpage. It's a big golf course where you hit up to a lot of greens. Mm-hmm. And this is what Jeff Ogilvy so eloquently laid out. You have to be a long hitter to win at Bethpage. Well, and these guys are not bomber. That's the biggest issue with the US team is that the back half of their roster is being filled in by short hitters.
Yeah, it's an unusual dynamic, but I will point out there is one American player who has won a tournament, a PGA Tour event at Bethpage Black, unless my memory is playing tricks on me. Pat Reed. We're talking long high ball hitter, course
fresh off of a third place finish.
Yeah. Listen,
you know who I could see being a good pairing? Reed and Bryson.
just the bad boys. Yeah.
Complementary games.
Absolutely. They would be a really interesting foursomes duo. That'll be fun. Yeah, I think that's kind of what they need. They need Patrick Reed to play good enough golf, especially in the majors, to be a really viable candidate here, because just looking at the rest of these players that they could have for the picks, for those last 6 picks, I don't know. It feels better to me to have Patrick Reed be one of those picks than with all apologies to Billy Horschel, who's delightful.
Oh, come on. What about Tom Hoagie and Billy Horschel? That could be dynamite pairing. Electric,
I think is the adjective for it. All right. I think it's my turn for a storyline.
Yeah.
This is not just a professional golf storyline. This is something to do with the game as a whole. And not just something I'm tracking this season also, but that I am paying attention to right now, and I think there are developments right now. Will the equipment companies, the PGA Tour, and the PGA of America continue to gang up on the USGA, R&A, and Augusta National on the rollback issue? What sort of leverage will professional golfers and golf professionals have over the governing bodies and the most powerful club in the world to cancel the rollback, to make it so it doesn't happen? I don't know at this point what they think they're going to be able to do, because if the USGA and R&A and Augusta National quietly stick to their guns, then 3 of the 4 majors are going to use the rolled back ball. And yet the PGA Tour is out there conducting tests on the ball and getting players unified around opposition to the rollback. Remember that Adam Schupak article back in March that got a little bit of run? And the main thing that got run out of that was Lucas Glover saying they haven't made no, that was another quote from Lucas Glover. They haven't made the goalposts narrower when field goal kickers got better, which I thought was funny to say. But he said this might be the time that the Tour and PGA of America say we're out. It would be nice if somebody took a stand for us for a change. And that's sort of what circulated. But I thought the big story in this article was that the PGA Tour was conducting tests with players. They were preparing findings to present to the governing bodies about the effects of a potential rolled back ball. So the PGA Tour has a program right now that they're following to oppose the rollback. And I want to keep an eye on this and hear about further developments, because I just wonder what they can possibly do, what kind of leverage they could gain over the governing bodies with regards to rollback. And I would have to assume that leverage would mostly be public relations, as opposed to being able to actually stop the process, because the governing bodies are going to be able to do it if they decide to stick with it. So I'm seeing a potential PR war heating up here. I think that's what the PGA Tour is doing. I think the PGA of America is going to join them on that front. And I just wonder how it's going to turn out, because I don't think they they actually really have a say in the matter, but they're going to try to have a say in it.
I think some interesting undertones are that maybe some of the equipment companies are realizing that they might want the rollback, that they
say more,
have an opportunity to cut into one company's giant, ball dominance.
I've always thought that this was an odd element, that TaylorMade would come out against the rollback, that Callaway would come out against the rollback. This is a great opportunity for them.
Yeah, I think there's also undertones that you just hear things from people that certain ball companies are very, very confident that they are actually ahead of the dominant ball company with the rollback ball.
Mm-hmm. Because maybe they've actually been working on it, as opposed to, paying lawyers to try to stop it from happening.
So I think that's, there's a lot of layers to this. One thing that I just worry about just in general is what's the rollback achieving? Is it going to achieve anything? We saw this. You did a great podcast about the history of the golf ball. And
long ago,
I'll never forget. It was a documentary pod.
Yeah, back in 2020.
Fried Egg. If you search Fried Egg Stories, you'll find it.
It's called The Ball. Is the three part series.
One of the all-time pieces of Fried Egg content to be. But one of the things I always have been stuck with was the story of when in the early 1900s there was a fight against, I can't remember exactly which ball was being fought against, but there was a rollback that was won. A rollback battle was won.
Yeah, this was in the early 20s.
And there were new specs that the new golf balls had to conform to starting on a certain date. And the date that those specs went into effect, a new ball came out that went even further than the last ball,
and that fit the specs. Yeah.
And I think what I always took away from that podcast for the last 5 years as I thought about this is, if you give talented engineers some constraints to innovate against, they will innovate and create a really great product. That's what they do. That's why they're talented engineers. And one of my fears is that this golf ball rollback does absolutely nothing.
Well, the rollback is so conservative that the effects would be easier to overcome.
Yeah.
They've had to make it a more conservative rollback because they weren't able to go the route of bifurcation, or they got so much pushback on that it wasn't viable. And so they have to make it a universal rollback, which means that they have to make it less of a rollback. If we had bifurcation, they would probably be able to be a little more aggressive. But we are where we are.
Yeah, and so we're at this place, and I think it could go one of two ways. Where my hope would be that this institutes the idea that regulation is okay, the idea that equipment regulation and making tweaks to what the best players in the world use is okay. That would be my hope for this, is that the sky is not falling, and that's the way that it comes out of this.
Yeah, that we have regular adjustments like they have in Formula One, where it's expected. Okay, we've got a new set of specs. Let's do this. But of course, that it's a different deal when you're talking about R&D being done by big companies, big equipment companies, as opposed to R&D by individual Formula One teams whose job it is to adjust to whatever new specs there are. Yeah, it's trickier.
Maybe Bryson could just, maybe he's our hope because he does his own R&D, and it becomes just it's on the player to do the R&D. Yeah. But my fear on that topic is that this is their one bullet, and if they're using their one bullet on something that does nothing to them, has no impact on the men's professional golf, and they've used all of their capital, and there is no. So that's kind of where I'm kind of sitting with rollback, is I'm kind of, cautiously optimistic, but also very worried about, potentially this being the only thing they can do, and it really does nothing.
Well, maybe that's sort of an answer to my question about what is the PGA Tour doing running tests, and what is the PGA of America doing speaking out against this, when it's probably going to just happen because the US Open and the Open and the Masters are very likely to institute the ball no matter what, and everybody's going to need to adjust to them. Well, what are the PGA Tour and PGA of America doing? They're probably making sure that this process is so hard that the governing bodies hesitate to do it again.
Yeah. So, my last thing will be the Walker Cup team.
Yeah,
the
going
American
to some
Walker
amateur
Cup
golf
team.
here.
Yeah. So I think this is gonna be a like all-time event.
Pretty good venue.
Cypress
Might talk
Point.
about it later.
But something that I'm tracking just in general and is jarring. I was watching some old Walker Cup footage recently, and you just see these players and you're like, oh God, what happened to that guy? Like, never went anywhere. What happened to this guy? And then if you watch like 2017, you look at the American team. Stuart Hagestad was the mid-am, but then here I'm going to read you the players. Cameron Champ, PGA Tour winner, multiple time PGA Tour winner. Doug Gim has had a bona fide PGA Tour card for 5 or 6 years now.
Yeah, solid player.
Maverick McNeely, PGA Tour winner, top 10 player in the world.
Coming into his own.
Yeah. Colin Morikawa, multiple major champion, top 5 player in the world. Doc Redman, bona fide PGA Tour player. Scotty Scheffler, one of the best players in the world. One of the, all time, rounding into a generational player. Braden Thornberry. He is the one right now that has not, I
haven't heard from him recently.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Have not heard a ton. He is on the PGA Tour though. Now he got his PGA Tour card, which has been a long, winding road.
I remember seeing that story that he came through the Korn Ferry Tour. Yeah,
he won
the Korn Ferry Tour championship.
Yeah, and he won the NCAA championship in 2017. Mm-hmm. So he's maybe his best golf is coming. But he's on the PGA Tour, so he's got his PGA Tour card. And then Norman Zhang, who has kind of been a big story, was like supposed to be golf's next big thing, has not panned out. But if you compare this to like the 80s Ryder Cups.
You mean Walker Cups?
Or Walker Cups. There was nowhere near this type of hit rate. And if you look at, it's harder to look at like the next years, because we're now at a point with these teams where it's like, okay, we've given these teams enough time to settle in and we know where their careers are. But if you're starting to look at these like Walker Cup teams, the hit rate is so freaking high with them. I mean, it is extraordinarily high. And I think like that is just a interesting lens to look at the Walker Cup through from now on. And I say this because this year's team appears to be of that generational type thing. And is a big question is going to be who of the top players is going to be playing, because Luke Clanton has his PGA Tour card. Jackson Koiven is one made cut on the PGA Tour or one amateur win away from having his PGA Tour card through PGA Tour U, just like Luke Clanton. David Ford is going to be the number 1 ranked player in PGA Tour U, which earns him a PGA Tour card. Of course, he's struggling. He might not make the team because of his struggles. Gordon Sargent is another American in contention for the Walker Cup team, probably on the outside at this point, given his struggles, but he has a PGA Tour card. This Walker Cup team, if those 4 players play, if those 4 players, I doubt all 4 of them will be there, but if all 4 of them were there, they would have 4 players with PGA Tour cards on a 10-person team that includes one mid-am, probably Evan Beck. So you're talking about 4 of the 9 players would have their card, and then you start to look at the next couple guys, and it's like Ben James, Ian Gilligan, Brendan Valdez. Like these are players. Tommy Morrison, who was the low am at the Open. You know, like you're talking about like big time players who have already been doing it. I mean, Ben James was, you know, he wasn't in contention, but he was in the mix at a PGA Tour event a couple weeks ago. Ian Gilligan, I think, had a top 20 finish on the PGA Tour this year. You're talking about a list of names that could be extraordinary when you look back on it.
Yeah, it should be a really fun tournament to watch for a number of reasons. The GBNI team hasn't had the kind of same hit rate recently.
More of an American-centric storyline.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, those are tremendously promising players. And there's also an indication here of how the amateur game has changed, that so many of these potential team members for the American Walker Cup team have already shown that they can perform on the PGA Tour. There's no doubt that they're going to be able to make that leap in some form or fashion. Whereas back in the day, it was a lot more rare for players to, you know, stick around being amateurs, but also being in PGA Tour events. Obviously, NIL has had its effect here. But yeah, these are some awesome prospects on the American team, and should be a great tournament to watch.
Yeah, should be super fun. So that's kind of my final storyline. All right, to close this pod out, let's talk about our most tournament we're most excited to watch because of the golf course on TV with the remainder of the schedule.
Yeah, easy answer is Cypress Point for the Walker Cup. That's just going to be great. We'll see what the TV coverage is like. Typically, the American Walker Cups, like we keep saying Ryder Cup, the American Walker Cups recently, the ones held in the U.S., have been televised pretty thoroughly. They did a good job at Seminole showing the golf course, but clearly this is not coverage on the level of a major championship. It's just going to be amazing to see high-level televised golf at Cypress Point for the first time in many, many years. This is clearly one of the world's greatest golf courses, and one that, you know, is not easy to play. And so people are going to get a little insight into what this course is like. Everybody's familiar with the Oceanside holes at Cypress Point, but where this course really becomes great is its dune land holes. The way those holes use that land, use the high points, use the dunes in different ways. It's just delightful in those stretches of the golf course. And I'm hoping that those holes get a little bit of a highlight in the television coverage. But that's the one I'm looking forward to. You just have to choose Cypress Point among the big venues that are remaining this year.
I really, you know, who knows what the TV contract is, right? Yeah. But if I was Golf Channel, I might think to myself, what a great opportunity for us to do more, since we are going to be out there. And maybe we should show all of these matches in full, because we think that there's going to be a tremendous appetite to watch the greatest amateurs in the world play the, you know, arguably the greatest golf course that nobody ever sees in the world.
Yeah. Your tone indicates that you're skeptical that Golf Channel will have this brainwave.
Well, you know, it depends if Sam Flood determines that this is an event that they want to go all in on, you know? Yeah. But yeah, I'm very skeptical of it. I think, like, you know, this is an event that would have 100,000 fans if it allowed. I would love, and you're never probably going to get like the number of people that enter into the ticket lottery, but
that's going to be one of the hardest tickets to get imaginable.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many people have asked me, like, how would you recommend getting tickets? I
trying
said,
to be
just
volunteers, trying any which way. Yeah,
I was like, just pray that you get super lucky in the lottery.
Just have really good connections, maybe.
Yeah, and then they're like, "Can you get me tickets?" I'm like, "No,
no, we're not in that tier of the social status."
But yeah, I think it would be very wise for them to expand any coverage that's outside their contract and just go all out with all these matches, because I think there will be a huge. And what else are they going to put on TV? is like, would be my question.
People always say that golf architecture is a niche interest, but when it comes to Cypress Point, I think the interest is going to be pretty general and widespread. So safe to say that if they're able to show a lot of the course, that there are a lot of people, not just a small group of nerds, that would be interested in it.
All right, with Cypress Point off the board, I am going to go with Royal Portrush for this one. We saw it in 2019. It was its debut or first hosting in forever. It was
since the
debut.
1950s.
Yeah, 1950s. Yeah. And I think this is just, it's hard to say something's underrated when it's a top 20 course, widely considered top 20 course in the world. And it's like hard when you get to that stratosphere. It's like, you're kind of picking your like what you like the best. It's you're at this like level of golf courses. But I mean, I think this is one of the most complete, thorough, phenomenal golf courses in the world. It has world-class holes all over the place. I mean, you start to go like 4, 5, 6, like you just can run down the list. 8 and 9, I probably wouldn't put in the world-class bucket. But then you go on the back 9, it's got maybe the best finish of any open championship. I mean, really, you go like holes 14 through 18 are extraordinary golf holes. And you just, all in all, it's a Harry Colt design in the late 20s. This is a late golden age golf course that is hosting an open championship. And I think like a lot of open championship hosts are like kind of rudimentary pieced together golf courses. And this is not, I'm not like maybe the best golf course in the world.
At rudimentary.
Maybe the best golf course in the world was constructed this way. The old course at St. Andrews.
They're from a different era. This is like really the only true golden age, like pure golden age open championship course. Because Birkdale was later, was a post-war golf course. And then every other course in the Rota, it has ancient roots, basically.
I think you could probably put Muirfield in the bucket too.
But is it in the Rota anymore?
Yeah, it might not.
Question.
But this golf course is extraordinary. It has the dramatic dunes. It has the refined, intricate and, sometimes vexing green complexes. It has the elements. This is, to me, with the modern game, the most complete open championship test that we have. The old course is the most historic. It is the most, it's the one that you can wax poetic about the most because of the history and the roots of the game and just the love affair that golf has with the old course in St. Andrews. But like, let's make no qualms about it. Like this for modern golfers is the premier, in my opinion, test of golf on the Open Championship Rota. I think the Open and just something underlying I'm watching. We've kind of started to see Scotty's taste in golf courses through press conferences come to the forefront. He talked about the predictable nature of Augusta National, about how, in the sense of like with his tee shot, if I hit a good tee shot, I've got a great chance. If I hit an okay tee shot, I've got an okay chance. If I hit a bad tee shot, I'm in trees and I'm in trouble. And he likes that. He talked about at the U.S. Open at Pinehurst, his dislike for the waste areas and the chance that it presented.
Might be a member of the Fair Police.
And then if you look at his Open track record, the Open Championship, it just has not matched his other majors in the resume at other majors. I think like the underlying storyline for one of the underlying storylines for me is like, does Scotty hate links golf, and is he going to be in like kind of like the Phil Mickelson camp where it takes him a long time to learn to appreciate it, which is like honestly like a great story for when someone figures it out and learns to love it, because it seems like right now he does not love links golf. He doesn't like the slower greens. He had all kinds of putting issues last year, and that's just kind of one of my underlying Scotty storylines is I'm watching him at the Open, but Portrush is, God, I love that golf course. I love it. And I I hope I go, but if I go, then I miss media day at Cypress Point, so it's kind of it's an internal jostle there.
These are the tough choices that you have to make when you're in the coal mines of golf media.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, you went to Northern Ireland last year, and you saw this course as part of that trip. You saw Royal County Down, Royal Portrush, and many other great courses in Northern Ireland. And so this is one of those. So what's something that you saw it at the 2019 Open, you saw it in person. What's something that struck you about the in-person experience versus the TV experience?
I think it's just the completeness of the whole place. It's just so well thought out. There's like extremely strategic holes. Like the 4th is like just an awesome boundary hole. The 5th is obviously one of Links Golf's great short par 4s. The
green out on the cliff for people who don't remember.
With OB, the dune, literally you could just hit it over the dune that goes down to the beach.
Yeah, might be a drivable par 4 in this edition. Yeah,
and then the 6th is an all-time par 3. The 7th is a great hole. It's just, I think, like, to me, and then you bake in the finish. I mean, the middle part of the back nine is awesome. But then the finish, 15, is an all-world par 4. You're kind of playing up, and it feels like you're playing up to heaven at the green. It's up on this ridge. And then you got 16, the Calamity, the 240-yard, all you could ask for par 3. 17, a fascinating short par 4 with the kind of like, do you lay up to the top and take the free wedge, or do you drive it down and the hill can kind of kick you in all sorts of ways? And then 18, a big par 4 to finish. It's awesome. It is the town's great. It is just it is a spectacular venue. And that, I think like the Open, the commercial the commercial undertones of the Open has taken away from some of the venues that are feasible for it to go to. But this is one of the venues that can host the most people. I think it's going to be the 3rd most attended Open, and that's cool.
That's why they've gone there. They might not have gone back if it hadn't been for the fact that the Open has now outgrown some of the traditional Open Rota venues, but they were able to get to Northern Ireland, and Portrush is now firmly part of the Rota, and that's a great thing for everybody. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that one too. I want to shout out a couple more courses that people should look forward to. Obviously, Oakmont for the U.S. Open is going to be really interesting. A recent Gil Hanse renovation has sort of refined some aspects of the course, but not wrought an amazing transformation like he did at Southern Hills, because Oakmont had already done a great deal of work to get to the point that it is now before Hanse came in a couple of years ago. We've got PGA Frisco, the first look at PGA Frisco and Major Championship Golf for the Women's PGA Championship. That's going to be a frequent venue going forward. So I'm very curious to see how that plays for the women. We've got Philly Cricket Club.
Yeah,
that's good. You mentioned this earlier. The Truist. I think that'll be next week. Yes, that's the week that this or
next week,
the week after this podcast comes out. And then we've got Erin Hills for the U.S. Women's Open, going back there for the first time in a while, and Royal Porthcawl for the women's AIG Women's Open. So some really cool golf courses coming up on the schedule. Lots of fun coffee golf, as well as golf at other times of the day at very good golf courses.
Awesome. Great wrap up. Garrett, thanks for coming on. Thanks for joining the pod, and we'll see you in Western Pennsylvania.
Thanks, Andy. Always a delight. Yeah, media day coming up.
I'm excited to chat about Oakmont. That's probably one of the last remaining great golf courses in the United States I haven't seen. And you haven't seen it either. I
haven't been there. Yeah, and it's hard to come up with a reason to go to that area for golf. There are a lot of
now you're gonna get all
the Pittsburgh people. I didn't mean it that way.
I can't wait to see Allegheny. We just about
got out of the podcast without pissing off Pittsburghians.
I can't wait to see Allegheny. I can't wait to see.
I mean, there's a lot of good golf courses in that area.
I'm gonna plant my flag as I've been waiting eagerly waiting to go to Pittsburgh to see the great golf in Pittsburgh.
I remember going to Pittsburgh in college for a club water polo tournament and driving from Connecticut to Pittsburgh and getting to Philadelphia at one point and being like, oh, we're almost there. But you're not almost there.
You know what I'm also looking forward to? PJ, U.S. Open week. You got to look this up. Who are the Pirates playing? I can't wait to go to PNC Park. That's the other thing is I can't wait to go to Pirates game U.S. Open week.
You know what I will say?
Hopefully the Mets are in town. That'd be great for PJ. It's not the Mets he's saying.
Although I've just slandered Pittsburgh golf for some reason. I mean, there's a lot of good golf in that area, but Pittsburgh City, really cool city. I love Pittsburgh. I've been there a couple of times. Went for a wedding one time. Went for other reasons as well. It's such a fun city. So people who go to the U.S. Open this year, a lot of great things to do in Pittsburgh. Hope that gets me back on the good side of those Midwesterners out there in Western Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Who's the team, PJ?
The Marlins.
Oh, the Marlins. We got to go watch great 4A baseball.
That would be fun.
Yeah.
That would be fun. I don't know if we're going to have time for that, though.
Two farm system teams duking it out during U.S. Open week.
Yeah.
So, all right. Thanks, Garrett. And we'll talk to you very soon.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you for listening to another edition of the Friday Golf Podcast. Big thanks to PJ Clark for editing and producing this podcast. We'll be back next week. I think we're going to do an Oakmont debrief with Garrett after we both play Oakmont for the first time in our lives. Talk about the upcoming U.S. Open venue. So then we're right at the PGA. It's kind of wild. Always am shocked at how quick this major schedule gets going. But yeah, we'll be humming. So thanks for listening and look forward to talking to you guys next week.